Hey ladies, this video is actually the part three of long term versus short term, how to be long term and how not to be short term. And I am directing it to the ladies because hopefully you guys can learn from some of my experiences, some of my friends' experiences, and how you don't want to make that change from long term to short term, and then see if you can go back to long term. You want to keep it that way. Now, women can go from short term to long term. It's happened. It's happened, and like I said, it is not statistically high as in regards in respect to whether a relationship or marriage works out in that type of situation. Because you'll hear about those women. Well, me and my husband had sex on the first day, and we're together. And I understand that every relationship is going to have its problems, but from talking to women and viewing or being a part of being at people's houses that were married and who had started their relationships out like that, I'm going to tell you something. It was a lot of work, and it was a lot of frustration, and people get burnt out. And the reason it's different in that case than in the case where people actually took time to get to know each other is because people actually took time to get to know each other. When you start off with sex in your short term, or you're playing sexual games or whatever you're doing drugs together, getting high together, going to parties together, drinking all the time. What happens is that you don't really get to know that person and their qualities or lack thereof. So the first year or first 6 months is great, and you're living together and you're having sex all the time, and it's wonderful, except for you wake up one day and you're like, we're two different people. So let's throw in a couple of kids, or let's just throw in us, and we get together. That other time, you're gonna really have to work twice as hard on getting to know each other, twice as hard as seeing what other women would have weeded out. They're going to be they can't really weed it out. The women that, let me say that again. What the women who were long term and weeded out the men who were on game players, didn't have good morals and ethics and values. You're going to, that short term woman, if it's you and you get into a serious relationship because you think you've changed to long term, or that man marries you, you're going to end up spending a lot of time getting to know him, and it's not going to be in a good way. And the reason why is because for the most cases, you're not going to know who you're really sleeping with. You're not going to know that when he gets upset, he wants to leave out the house, and he expects you to be with the kids, and he doesn't really believe in being a family man and being at home, and he likes to still play his games, and he doesn't really like to work, and he has problems getting along with other people, and he doesn't want you to work, or he wants you to do all the work. You figure this out. And so you fight. So people, just because you see somebody with a wedding ring on doesn't necessarily mean that everything's the way that you would expect it to be. And so I don't, like I said, there's going to be, you cannot get to know every single person before you have sex. You don't even know yourself uh, for years until you get into your 20s and 30s, late 20s and early 30s. But it's gonna just the road is gonna be a little harder, because at least if I come to you and I say, well, look, I I have a value and I have respect for myself, and I'm not gonna have sex unless I'm in a situation that's leading to marriage, and a relationship that's healthy relationship that's leading to marriage, or I want to save myself, or and on top of that, my actions show that. And I want to study with you, and I want to show you some of my other womanly skills. I want to cook for you, and we do stuff together, and I help you with your projects, and I give you advice, and I'm there for you, and you're there for me. Then naturally he's going to, if you guys are compatible, he's going to have those qualities, and that just goes with everything. With if you don't smoke, there's just other things you're going to do. You probably don't drink a lot. You probably don't do heroin. You probably don't go to strip clubs. It's just some characteristics that kind of go along with territory. So you're going to be able to if you're having issues with finances, or somebody made a mistake in the relationship, it might be a little bit easier to work it out because you're invested in a healthy way, because you understand that that person has the it's worth it is worth fighting for, because that person has the qualities that you do. Whereas this dude is cheating on you, or you have an argument over finances, it's like you're selfish. I don't really know you. I didn't know this, and you're frustrated because they weren't selfish before, or you didn't see it, or you didn't ask. So that's how the short term gets to the long term. But I think that there's a lot more complications. And, you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, we had to work hard at it. And, even with my parents, my mom said that, yeah, we had to work hard at it. And, I had to really work with your dad on some things. And that's because their relationship did not start out ideally. Okay. And for reasons that a lot of women have: insecurity, low self-esteem. They get with the man to be the father. That's the case pretty much. There's a lot of women who don't have fathers. They just rush into it, and they turn from short term to long term, and then they're in over their heads. Okay, so I can't guarantee that. All right, but I know what you don't want to do is it's going to hurt you a lot more if you go from long term to short term, because he saw you, like I said, number one, as a wife, as wife material, and number two, as wife material for him. So when oh, I got drunk, we ended up having sex, or he gave me oral sex, I gave him oral sex, or we decided to smoke together, or we went on a robbery, or I don't know, or you start talking like, yeah, I got to have a man that does this and does that, and he's got to, do this, and he's got to make this much money. When you start playing those games, they're going to put you in a category. Or, for example, he might ask you, how many men have you been with, or what would your last boyfriend say about you, or what are the kind of things you'd like to do, and if you're acting ditzy, or you don't really, your answers really don't make sense. They're not fluid. It seems like there's red flags. You're going into the short term category. Now, I'm not saying that you could have never made a mistake before, man or woman, because you're going to make mistakes. But I think when you fully have accepted yourself and became humble, you can say, well, yeah, I made mistakes before. I've been with men, but I've never been this. I've never been that. And I've learned from it. And the way I've learned from it is, I'm celibate now. I had to learn how to respect myself. Versus, well, yeah, I maybe a few men, or just one, and yeah, and then looking at him sexual. He's gonna be like, yeah, she's probably had sex with everybody. That's a probably real bad example. But my underlying point is that you can just like a resume, you can highlight your strong points, and everybody on their resume has some things. Maybe you got fired from a job. Maybe you didn't work as hard. Maybe you lied and put a job on there you didn't do. That's true for him, but as well. So I'm not saying you're talking to Mr. Perfect, but how you are as a person now is, and your relevant past, how long ago that was, can kick you out of the long term relationship status, marriage material status, and and my point, like I told the women, there are going to be some men who are not compatible with you. I don't want my woman to have been with anybody. I don't want my woman to have ever smoked. I don't want my woman to drink. Now, you have to understand that those are his expectations and those are his value system. It doesn't mean it's yours. So if he rejects you or you reject him, I mean, that's just life. You're only looking for one husband, not 10. So, that's fine. But don't just get discouraged and, oh, forget it. I'm just going to go have sex with everybody. I'm not good enough. I'm just going to go call my ex-boyfriend. Don't do that, because you're making a mistake. You're moving forward. Okay, so all that other junk you got in your closet and things you did before that you're not proud of, that you can't hold your head up high to, it only made you more humble. But don't let that put you in the category of short term, because you can't cope with your past.